be afraid.
Well, with movies like Iron Man 3 and The Avengers breaking box office records, the comic book industry, which those movies are based on, is also growing, especially in the Black community.
And although more people of color are buying comics, many raise the question, why aren't we seeing more diversity in these timeless books? So here to discuss the browning of the comic book world are DJ Benhameen, oh, I love that name, and Chico Leo, even better, woo. And they're from the popular podcast Fan Bros. So Fan Bros,
welcome, Fan Bros.
Welcome, Fan Bros. And you brought all your superhero friends with you.
Absolutely, and we just spent some time with this one a few nights ago.
Really?
With Iron Man, yeah. No, we went to the midnight screening, the opening. Yeah.
You guys are fancy. And
absolutely.
You have to forgive Lola and I, because we're not, comic book fans. We love the movies, but we're not really in the world of comic books.
I like comic books, but I just don't know a lot about comic books. So that's why you're here, Chico Leo, to educate us.
And I was actually surprised to find out how popular these books are in the Black community.
Yeah, absolutely, and America and the world at large. You know, Iron Man 3 was the #1 movie this last week. The Avengers was the #1 movie last year. The Walking Dead, which is based on a comic book, is the #1 basic cable TV show in America. And there's a moment right now where everybody is definitely paying attention to comics and a lot of the media based on comics.
Now, why do you think that's happening right now? I've read somewhere that it's the ultimate form of escapism, and times are tough right now, so people just want to be able to escape into another universe.
Well, it's like people are, like comics, like you said, are allowing escape. And then also, like for the Black community especially, comics represent, like for me, X-Men growing up was a comic that was about the downtrodden and the feared and hated people. And they were just trying to protect the world, but people still didn't understand them. So as a Black man, it's something you can relate to. And like we were saying earlier, it's somewhat like President Obama right now, because he just wants to protect the world, but most people can't stand him.
He's our superhero. I like that analogy.
So you definitely see parallels between what's happening in these comic books and the Black American experience.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, X-Men especially.
Yeah, the X-Men was created
out of the Civil Rights
Movement, exactly. So there's a lot of parallels there. Whereas some of these older heroes like Superman, Batman, they go back 60, 70 years. It was a very different 80 years, a different America. And I think some of those older characters are a little trapped in a box. But a lot of these movies and TV shows are updating them. And the recent Smallville TV show, Clark Kent, Superman, his childhood best friend, Pete Ross, was a Black kid, whereas he had been a white kid back in the 30s. And 40s when he was first introduced. We got Jamie Foxx coming as Electro. He's the big villain in the
new Spider-Man
movie.
And there was a Black Spider-Man at some point also, right?
Yeah, recently Marvel introduced Miles Morales. He was Black and Puerto Rican, if I think, half Black, half Puerto Rican character, and he replaced the classic Peter Parker in the Spider-Man book.
Now, you guys are talking a lot about the different movies and the TV shows that have some type of incidence on Black community. You have some characters that are playing Halle Berry's in X-Men. You got, Samuel L. Jackson in all the Marvel movies. But do you think it's easier for that to happen, the crossover, for the diversity to happen in the, say, movies than it is the actual books that are comics?
Yeah, I think so, because movies probably are more diverse because comics are still mainly written by middle-aged white men for the most part, and so they're not as diverse because of that. They're still a little bit behind. While movies, you have Black directors, Black writers, whatnot, more often than you would in comics. So you're going to see more diversity in them.
Also, don't they, the movie industry obviously has more incentive to make their cast more diverse because you want all people in the seats, not just young white boys.
Are still a very insular medium. Like they still, that's one of their biggest problems right now, is that they don't reach out to more people. So it's still the same people generation after generation reading it, and so it's getting smaller. While movies, like you say, the audience is growing every day.
And also, I think it might be easier in the TV shows and movies to take a character that was traditionally in the comics white and make them just cast a black actor or a Latino or an Asian person than it would be to do that in the comic, to actually start drawing them as because then they would have to do a whole 12-issue series to explain how this person went from being a white guy to a black guy. Or,
Well, here's the new Spider-Man. He's half Black, half Hispanic, and they rolled him out, was it last year or 2 years ago. How was it received when he came out?
It was pretty well received. You didn't hear as much talk on the internet as you normally do when they introduce a black character. Like recently, the new Fantastic Four movie, they might cast a black guy as Johnny Storm, who's traditionally a white character.
With the Human Torch.
The Human Torch. And you have heard a lot of people complaining already about it, and he hasn't even been officially cast. Just the idea that a black man could play a white character got a little more, hate than you would expect.
And there's no reason that these characters should be black or white. For the most part, they're just people. And if they've been drawn one way, people get used to that. There was a sort of shameful thing that happened around the time of the Hunger Games where one of the characters was a black girl, and she's written that way in the book. And I guess people didn't read that line or they didn't pick it up. And there were people going on Twitter, well, I won't be sad when she dies, and just really terrible.
Yeah,
and it doesn't. Yeah, and
what was that about?
People had. She was a very sort of innocent. Likable character, and some people thought of her one way, even though it's written in the book that she was a light-skinned black girl, and they were shocked when they heard before the movie came out that she was going to be cast with a light-skinned black girl.
Now, when I think of a comic book aficionado, I don't look at you both and you think of the stereotypical nerdy guy who's playing Dungeons and Dragons or whatever.
I played Dungeons and Dragons.
See, that's the thing. I played Dungeons and Dragons when we were growing up.
So I guess you all are the new faces of this.
Yeah, no, they.
How do I dig myself out of this hole?
Well, why do you think so many people
I need a
see you guys
superhero
as
to
that?
rescue me from that.
I'll rescue you later.
Thank you, Shannon.
But why do so many people perceive, the comic book geeks, if you will, as one sort of type of person? When
That's what I was trying to say.
obviously
Good
not?
save. You guys don't look like comic book geeks.
You see The Simpsons, they still show this big, fat, old white guy with a big beard. And when I was a kid and went to comic conventions, there were a lot of people who looked like that. Now, there are still people who look like that in comic conventions, but now you've got people of all colors, all sizes, all genders. It's definitely much more of a. And I think
all genders.
All genders.
The flip
three of them.
side, I think there's an opinion some people have that some people just want to listen to hip hop and smoke weed and whatever. But some people are into cooking. Some people are into Dungeons and Dragons. Everybody has a wide. All groups have a wide range of interests.
Well, you bring up a good point because it's not only growing versus color, but also the Green Lantern just came out last year. Literally came out the closet last year. So
Wait,
it's opening up. In the
Yeah.
comic book, the Green Lantern, he came out of the closet last year.
The Green Lantern's gay?
Yeah,
One of the Green Lanterns.
There are
She's
many
like,
Green
what?
Lanterns, but no.
One of them came out as gay last year. Alan Stott came out as gay in the comic. But that's not the first major gay character in comics either, though. Like,
Really?
comics are as strange as they are, as strange as it's not as diverse. At the same time, it can be very diverse because you have gay leading characters. You do have black superheroes who are leading stars in the comics. And so you do have a lot of diversity that you might not see in other places.
Well, you said that the writers are still a very homogeneous group.
Definitely.
So how does the industry go about addressing that issue?
I think it's happening outside the industry. I think you have a lot of people who are able to use the internet, use websites like Kickstarter to put out their own comics that find their own audience, and they're able to go around the sort of major, the major studios, comic studios, and the comic companies, and they're able to do it and put their stuff out. So there's a lot more recent heroes that are nowhere near as popular as Superman and Batman, but 20, 30 years from now, some of them will be. Blade was just a supporting character in a comic called Tomb of Dracula. And he was a hugely successful franchise.
Right.
Yeah,
That was big for Wesley Snipes' career.
Well, not just that, it was big for comic book movies.
Right.
If you think about it, it was right after the Blade movies that a lot of these comic book movies started being made. I mean, we got 4 or 5 comic book movies coming out this summer.
Well, maybe now that he's out of jail, he can have another movie come out.
We would love to see a Blade 4.
He would love to see a Blade 4.
And 5 and
See
6.
a Blade 4
money.
check. Blade 4, 5, and 6.
Well, besides the movies, it seems like a lot of the video games that are coming out now have a lot more diversity than the comic books, or even the movies. How is that being, worked into the whole scenario?
I would kind of argue that though, because I wouldn't say, like, video games especially, they might even be worse than comics because you really don't see minority characters in the lead unless they're very stereotypical roles.
And then the athletes is where I see a
I
lot
mean,
of
you
it.
you know, if you turn on NBA 2K13,
Right.
you know, about basketball, of course, everyone's black. Or if you play Grand Theft Auto, the lead character
Well,
is
it is
black.
an NBA game.
Maybe I'm just seeing too many of the sports games. That's what
Yeah, definitely. But you do see more women lead characters in video games than you do.
Or are they scantily clad women? you know?
Yeah, the stereotypes even there are
Yeah.
still might be a little rough.
Okay,
Right.
so talk to us about your show really quickly before they tell us to wrap it on.
All right. Well, we're a Fan Bros show. You can find us on iTunes. We are basically a podcast that discusses geek culture from the perspective of people of color.
Wow, okay.
And issues of people of color within those. But, you know, we are fans first and foremost. We're not here to tear things down or just sit and point out the things that, you know, we spend more time talking about what we love about something than what's wrong with it. I mean, we definitely do. If something egregious happens, we'll definitely address it. But in general, I mean, we are fans first and foremost of, you know, comic book culture and geek culture. And so...
And we can turn to you guys to get the latest scoop on some of the things coming out as well.
Anytime.
Absolutely.
We'll be glad to come
Absolutely.
back.
All right. Good, good,
I love
good.
it. Like, wow.
Yes, well, thank you very
That was
much,
very
guys, for hipping us
illuminating.
Well, thanks
to the
for
geek
having
world
us.
of
Now,
comics.
I want to be a superhero now.
Oh, Lord. And your power would be?
The power to disappear to our break. You're watching Arise Entertainment 360.